The Conservation Commission approves a land swap that could pave the way to reopen the West Barnstable shooting range. We have details on this episode of Barnstable Today. It's Wednesday, October 19th, 2016. I'm Sarah Mannel. The Conservation Commission votes to approve a proposed land swap. The land swap could pave the way for the reopening of the West Barnstable shooting range. DPW Director Dan Santos talked about the land swap before the vote.
Back when we originally were trying to determine which area of land would be needed for the swap, this is the area that was chosen. This is the 16.3 acres. And this was developed basically by Mark Ells, looking at the existing ranges and the shotfall areas and safety zones that are typically associated with ranges. And that's why that all those offsets are there and why that 16.3 acres was created. So then we undertook a preliminary site assessment for lead contamination at the ranges. And you can see on this chart here, which is the lead distribution, there are really two designations that we're concerned with. And this is what we found. All these numbers and spots all throughout this area these are soil sampling locations. And they took that information and interpolated and created these contours of lead contamination. And the inner one is the 5,000 parts per million of lead. And the reason that's designated out is because that has to be handled differently than the concentrations that are between 600 and 5,000. And the 600 parts per million designation is the state requirement for cleanup under DEP's MCP, and that's the Soil 2 designation. S2 is 600 parts per million, and hence that designation. So basically, everything within that 600 part per million contour line, we have to clean up at some point, and everything outside would be considered okay. So based on that, working with the town's GIS department, we created this graphic, which shows a couple of areas. It shows the 16.3 acres in blue, the 5,000 part per million in yellow hash, and then the additional, what is it, I can't read it there, 7.1 acres additional, 7.1 acres additional in the 600 part per million beyond that. So taking that, basically we've determined that the range de facto is the area within 600 that exceeded 600 parts per million. So that's by definition the range. And the reason for that is because under the lead shot initiative, the state allows you to operate and basically put lead in the ground as long as you manage it. So by establishing this area as the range and the amount of land that's encompassed by this as the range, then the town has options for cleanup and dealing with this into the future. If it's not range, then we have to deal with it now. Right. And I think you've got some information in the past on what the extent and cost of that could be. Millions and millions of dollars, without a lot of management on our part. This gives us much more flexibility. And so what we originally did was, okay, let's encompass that 600 part per million line, and the black line is what the GIS department looked at as what would be the de facto range, as I just mentioned. So what we've done, based on the town manager's direction, is create the exact parcel. So this is a recordable plan and description of what that area would be, and it's 26.435 acres. And let me just go back a slide to show you one change we've made. And over here on Crocker Road, we wanted to make sure that the range was on the west side of Crocker Road, so that wasn't impacted. And so how do we do that? So basically, you can see here now that it goes right along the road. So what we're going to have to do to make sure that's not considered range is we're going to have to go out and resample that area, and we're going to do that as part of cleaning up the range proper, the ranges themselves, which I think Mangerell has discussed that we were going to be doing. But we're going to resample on the east side of Crocker Road to determine, in fact, if it does exceed 600 and where it might, and we're going to clean it up on the east side of Crocker Road so that becomes outside of the 600 part per million. That way you've got clear use of that road, and it's not affected by the lead designation or the range designation. And then finally, as part of that land swap, we had 17 acres on the Breeds Hill Road parcel, which you've seen before and have spent much time discussing. The additional parcel to get us to that 26.435 is this parcel here off Nye Road in Centerville, which is 10.25 acres in general municipal use at this point. And the manager had discussed this with the state, and they felt that they wanted a parcel that was equal size and value, basically environmental value to conservation, and they felt that this would be an adequate parcel. It abuts the pond, it abuts town conservation land, and it adds up with the Breeds Hill parcel to 17.225 acres, which exceeds the 26.435 shooting range designated parcel.
After hearing from a few residents during public comment, the Conservation Commission voted unanimously to approve that land swap. Town Council and the state legislature would need to approve the proposal with a 2/3 majority for it to proceed. Town Manager Mark Ells discussed the Conservation Commission's vote on Barnstable this morning.
Relative to the shooting range and this land exchange, where basically what's occurring, I get lots of emails still from people for and against reopening the shooting range, and a lot of people for are completely confused on what's going on.
Of course.
You know, they're saying to me, how can it take 2.5 years to rebuild a range? And that's absolutely not what's going on.
Right.
This is all about the state requiring us to remove the land that the shooting range is on from a conservation designation. And to do that, you need Conservation Commission vote, you need Town Council vote, then you need it to go to the state legislature for a vote. And those have to be 2/3 votes. So this is a significant effort to remove this. It's got nothing to do with the physical range itself.
Of course.
Range designated parcel.
And Town Manager Mark Ells says the issue will be back before Town Council November 3rd. Well, be sure to tune in to our hour-long news program, Barnstable This Morning, weekdays at 8 a.m. On tomorrow's show, we will learn about an event that's focused on improving your health. We'll find out what's on the agenda for this week's Town Council meeting during our interview with Town Council President Jessica Rapgrassetti. Plus, we'll have all the news and information you need. For Barnstable Today, I'm Sarah Mannel.
Channel 18 is the town of Barnstable's government access television station. Our staff of 4, a news coordinator, assistant news coordinator, and 2 videographers are responsible for all aspects of producing our programming. Every weekday we produce Barnstable This Morning, a live hour-long news program that includes live interviews with local leaders, feature segments, weather, sports, boating, and fishing reports. Barnstable Today, a 10-minute newscast, is also produced on a daily basis with a focus on board, committee, and commission meetings and special events in town. Our staff is also responsible for coordinating coverage of more than 30 monthly board, committee, and commission meetings, producing special programming, and maintaining Channel 18's informational bulletin boards. Channel 18 headquarters are at Barnstable Town Hall. We have a small television studio and office, 2 camera-equipped hearing rooms, and a control room and operations center on the top floor of the building. Channel 18 is solely operated by the town of Barnstable.